literally hot off the plane from Germany, and he comes straight in here to share with us this news. OK, first of all, your reaction to it and the timing of Gareth Southgate's resignation.
No surprise, I think, would be my initial reaction. I mean, look, I wrote a piece yesterday, and we've been saying on Sky Sports News, even before the final itself, that I expected Gareth Southgate to walk away after this tournament. I think he had that in his mind for some time. I mean, take yourself back to that 4-0 defeat to Hungary at Molineux in the build-up to the Qatar World Cup. He said after that World Cup, he thought about resigning then because he got such a level of criticism and abuse from some supporters. It was a 4-0 home defeat to Hungary, so there was bound to be criticism. But I think Gareth Southgate was surprised by just how vehement that abuse was as he walked off the pitch from England supporters. Then, of course, at Qatar, we thought he might walk away after Qatar, and he was persuaded to stay on. But just try and sum up the experience he's had out in Germany, Rob, and it was obvious this was coming. He had plastic beer cups thrown at him by some England supporters. That was a minority. What wasn't a minority was the level of booing directed at Gareth Southgate in stadiums all over Germany during this tournament. I was in all of them, in Dortmund, in Frankfurt, in Cologne, where the stadium announcer would read out the England team sheet, the starting 11, and then, as UEFA always do, they would announce the coach. And there were significant numbers of England fans booing Gareth Southgate's name being read out in the stadium. And that I've never seen before. I've never seen that before. And so that, on top of the fact that he was criticised by former players that he considered almost friends, in Gary Lineker and Alan Shearer, who were quite personal in their criticism of him, and Harry Kane, to be fair as well. Add to that the criticism that he got for England being unbeaten in the group stages, topping their group, playing not very well, playing really poorly, let's be honest. But I think the England manager was just sick of it, just absolutely sick of it. The fact that he wasn't being appreciated, that he felt he wasn't being given the credit he deserves, that even when England were unbeaten and were doing so well in major tournaments, he was still getting criticised. Add on top of that the fact that Gareth Southgate became the spokesperson for the FA. Whatever the biggest political issue in football, whatever the biggest political issue in world football, Gareth Southgate was the voice piece for it from the FA's perspective. That was a huge responsibility for him. So he did this role for almost 8 years. It was September 2016 when he stepped up. I think he found it harder and harder and harder. I think it physically and emotionally wore him down. And whilst I expected this to be his last tournament anyway, the way that all of that stuff I've just described developed throughout the tournament, I think he'd made his decision long before the final. Win, lose or draw. He was going to go. And add on top of that, he has real ambitions to get back into club management. He thinks he can do a very good job for a club side, high up in the Premier League, a Champions League club. That's what he wants. And so, whilst this is the end of his time as England manager, it's not the end of Gareth Southgate as a manager, and he has real ambitions to move on from here.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is one of his buzz phrases was, "I don't want to outstay my welcome."
Yeah.
Was that the sense that he had if he'd carried on to North America in 2 years' time, he would have outstayed his welcome?
He was becoming a hindrance. I wrote it in my piece yesterday. He was becoming a hindrance to England and to the team. And that's a really hard thing to say because that's not on his shoulders. But the story around matches was the relationship between the England manager and the England fans. The story around managers, the questions he kept being asked about, he tried to take all of that on his shoulders and protect the players. And we can have a big debate for as long as we like about the tactics that he used and whether he made substitutions early enough and whether he was attacking enough in his thinking, whether he got the best out of England's attacking talent, which many people and myself feel is the best for a generation. That's a tactical debate. But what I think finished Southgate off and has become clear over the last couple of years to him is that it's the personal nature of the attacks from supporters, from media, from pundits, that just meant he'd had enough. He had nothing left in the tank.
So how did we get to that place? Because England were in a far darker place footballing-wise when he took over. The statistics from the FA statement quite clearly show what he has achieved. But it's not just on the pitch with the results. It's how he has developed that squad and that feeling within there. So those are all huge ticks. So how did we get to the place where he was being criticised?
That, I think, is the imponderable. That's what Gareth Southgate himself cannot understand, because he thought it was all going very well. You know, England had been to consecutive European Championship finals. They'd been to a World Cup semi-final and a World Cup quarter-final. And there is an element here, a large element of be careful what you wish for. Because before Gareth Southgate took over, I think we need to remember what England was like when Gareth Southgate took over. Sam Allardyce had just departed after 67 days in charge. Roy Hodgson was his predecessor, and they got knocked out of the European Championships at the earliest possible stage by Iceland. England were in the mire, they were in the pits, and they turned to Gareth Southgate as an interim option, a caretaker option, step up from the under-21, see what you can do. And he didn't start with flying colours, it was 2 wins and 2 draws. And there was a lot of opposition to Gareth Southgate being appointed at the time. A lot of people thought he wasn't a big enough name. But it was the start of a change in culture and a change in attitude within the FA when they appointed Gareth Southgate. They wanted an English coach, somebody who'd come through their setup, who understood the value of St George's Park, who understood the value of the pathway from the young players coming through. Gareth Southgate epitomised all of that. And so that's why he was appointed. And the FA desperately wanted him to stay because of all of those reasons. The respect he showed for the media, the way he was a brilliant politician, the way he was a brilliant orator. All of that really appealed to them, and because he understood the England DNA, if you like. And that's what I think will influence their decision going forward about who they replace him with. And look, I'm sure we'll talk about that in due course. But yeah, I mean, look, he has a fantastic record, and I think history will judge Gareth Southgate very kindly when it looks back. Apart from Sir Alf Ramsey, who won the World Cup in 1966, Gareth Southgate's record stands alone. No England manager has achieved what he has achieved. But, and this is the big but, I think, Rob, I think this is where the hostility comes from. He didn't get England over the line. He couldn't deliver that silverware.
Yeah, but neither did Sven, who had arguably a better team there.
The golden generation.
Yeah, and there were others who had maybe better players.
Do you know what I think the turning point was for me? It was the European Championship final at Wembley 3 years ago, when there was an Italian side that was there for the taking in extra time. You had 2 ageing Italian centre-backs, both on yellow cards. England were dominant. England should have won that final. And Gareth Southgate didn't make the substitutions to exploit the weakness in that Italian central defence in extra time. And it went to penalties, and we know what happens. And that was a lottery. But I think that one moment in that one game turned a lot of England supporters against him. They thought, that was our big moment, and we didn't grasp it, we weren't positive enough. But, as I say, that's one moment in an 8-year managerial career for England where he's taken England to extraordinarily new heights that we haven't seen before.